The afternoon sun filtered through my kitchen window, casting warm gold across the counter where I rolled out pie dough. The same counter my husband David built 40 years ago when this house was just raw lumber and a dream. My hands worked the dough in steady circles, the rhythm as familiar as breathing. Apple pie was Emma's favorite, and my granddaughter would be home from school in an hour, ready to press her small thumbs into the crust edges the way I'd taught her. I'd been making this pie for longer than I cared to count. First for David, back when his hands still smelled of sawdust and his laugh filled every corner of this house. Then for Jonathan, my boy, who used to climb onto a stool and steal apple slices while I worked. Now for Emma and little Lily, who made the kitchen feel alive again in ways I'd forgotten were possible. The house held its memories well. David's workbench still sat in the garage. His tools hung exactly where he left them 3 years ago, before the cancer took him in a single brutal spring. Sometimes I walked past that bench and swore I could still smell the cedar shavings, still hear him humming some old Eagles song while he worked. "Mom?" Jonathan's voice pulled me back. He stood in the doorway, tie loosened, looking tired in that specific way that comes from staring at computer screens all day. "That smells amazing." "Emma requested it," I said, brushing flour from my hands. "She's got a presentation tomorrow. Apparently apple pie helps with public speaking." He smiled, a real one, not the tight corporate smile he'd started wearing lately. "She gets that from you. Remember when you gave that speech at my college graduation? Dad said you commanded the room." The memory stung sweetly. David in the audience, so proud he couldn't sit still. Jonathan poured himself coffee, and I noticed his hand trembled slightly. "How was work?" "Fine, busy." He stared into his cup. "Mom, I've been meaning to talk to you about—" "Jonathan!" Claire's voice cut through from the hallway, sharp as scissors through silk. "I told you we need to discuss the guest bathroom before dinner." My daughter-in-law appeared in the doorway, perfectly composed in cream cashmere, her dark hair styled in a way that probably cost more than my weekly grocery budget. Claire had always been beautiful in that polished magazine way, but lately there was something harder in her eyes, something that reminded me of birds I'd seen at the zoo. Beautiful, but watching everything through cage bars. "Mom's making pie," Jonathan said. Claire's smile didn't reach her eyes. "How lovely." She glanced at the counter, and I could have sworn I saw her counting something mentally. "Nancy, did you remember to take your afternoon medication?" "I don't take afternoon medication," I said calmly. "Oh." She tilted her head, concern painted across her features like stage makeup. I could have sworn Dr. Morrison prescribed something. Maybe I'm confused. But her eyes said she wasn't confused at all. Jonathan frowned. "Mom hasn't seen Dr. Morrison in 6 months. "Hasn't she?" Claire pulled out her phone, tapped something. "Interesting. Well, I'm sure I'm mistaken." She turned to Jonathan. "The bathroom? We really need to decide on those fixtures." As they left, I heard Claire's voice drop to a whisper. "She seems more forgetful lately. You should pay attention to these things." I stood at the counter, pie dough cooling beneath my palms, and felt the first cold thread of something wrong wind its way through my chest. That evening, we gathered around the dining table, Jonathan at the head, Claire to his right, the girls between us like small bridges. Emma chattered about her presentation, something about volcanoes, while Lily pushed peas around her plate in elaborate patterns. I watched Claire watch me. She'd been doing that lately, observing me the way scientists observe lab rats, taking notes on her phone whenever she thought I wasn't looking. Earlier, during dinner, I'd coughed twice, and I'd seen her thumbs move across the screen, counting, recording. "Grandma, will you help me with my volcano project this weekend?" Emma asked. "Of course, sweetheart." "Actually," Claire interjected smoothly, "your grandmother might not be available. We've been thinking about getting her more rest. Haven't we, Jonathan?" Jonathan looked uncomfortable. "We mentioned that maybe Mom's been doing too much." "I'm fine," I said. "I'd love to help with the volcano." Claire's smile tightened. "Of course you would. We just want to make sure you're not overdoing it. At your age, rest is so important." "At my age?" I was 67, not ancient. I'd spent 35 years as a nurse, on my feet for 12-hour shifts, managing emergencies that would make most people faint. My shoulder injury from a patient fall 2 years ago had forced early retirement, but my mind was as sharp as it had ever been. "Speaking of rest," Claire continued, "have you noticed anything different lately, Nancy? Any confusion? Misplaced items? I thought about the keys I'd spent 20 minutes searching for yesterday, only to have Claire find them in the refrigerator. I thought about my wallet, discovered in the bathroom medicine cabinet last week. At the time, I'd laughed it off as absent-mindedness. Now, meeting Claire's eyes across the table, I wasn't laughing. "No," I said carefully. "Nothing different." Claire made another note on her phone. "Jonathan, we should probably mention this to Grandma doesn't forget things," Emma announced with 8-year-old certainty. "She remembers everything. She told me about this time Dad tried to make breakfast and set the toaster on fire, and that was like 100 years ago." "I was 12, Jonathan said, grinning, "and it was only a small fire." The moment passed, but I caught the look on Claire's face. Frustration, quickly masked. She wanted me to appear confused, forgetful. She wanted witnesses to my supposed decline. The question was, why? Over the next 2 weeks, the incidents escalated. My phone went missing 3 times, always turning up in bizarre locations. Mail I knew I should have received never arrived. Friends stopped calling, and when I finally reached out to my old nursing colleague Barbara, she sounded surprised. "Nancy, I've been trying to reach you for weeks. Your phone kept going to voicemail, and when I came by the house, nobody answered." "I've been home," I said, confused. "When did you come by?" "Last Tuesday around 2. Last Tuesday at 2, I'd been in the backyard hanging laundry. The doorbell should have been audible, unless someone had turned off the chime. That same week, I received a bill from a psychiatrist I'd never visited. When I called the office, a pleasant receptionist confirmed, "Yes, Mrs. Wilson, you scheduled an appointment via email but didn't show up. We had to charge the cancellation fee." I didn't send any email. It came from inwilson1956@gmail.com. That was my email address. My password-protected email address. I hung up, hands shaking, and that's when I saw it. A small piece of paper tucked behind the fruit bowl. A credit card statement, not fully hidden, as if someone wanted me to find it. Pacific Luxury Jewelers, $900. I'd never set foot in Pacific Luxury Jewelers. When I showed Claire the statement, she did something that in retrospect should have been my first real warning. She looked pleased. "Oh, Nancy." Her voice dripped with sympathy. "Did you forget making that purchase?" "I didn't make any purchase." "Are you sure?" "Because, honey, this is exactly how it started with my aunt." Little memory gaps, purchases she didn't remember. It's nothing to be ashamed of. Dementia can happen to anyone. "I don't have dementia." "Of course not, I'm sure it's nothing." But she took a photo of the statement before handing it back. "Still, maybe we should mention this to Dr. Morrison at your next checkup, just to be safe." Jonathan walked in as Claire was leaving the kitchen. He glanced at me, concern creasing his forehead. "Mom, everything okay?" "Fine," I said, but it came out hollow. That night I couldn't sleep. I lay in the darkness of the bedroom I'd shared with David, staring at the ceiling and listening to the house breathe around me. Around 1:30 a.m., I heard voices, low, urgent, coming from downstairs. I moved quietly to the top of the stairs. "Can't keep doing this," Jonathan's voice strained. "If she's really declining, we need to get her proper help." "We will, baby. But we need documentation first." Claire, calm and reasonable. "The doctor won't take us seriously without evidence of the pattern. That's why I've been keeping track. It just feels wrong. Going through her things, monitoring her every move." "Jonathan." A pause. "Do you remember what you told me last month? About the company? About the layoffs?" Silence. Heavy, awful silence. "We're barely making our mortgage," Claire continued, softer now. "Your salary was cut 40%. We've maxed out 3 credit cards. Our savings are gone. And your mother is sitting on $1 million property, free and clear, while we're drowning. That's her house. Dad built it for her. And she'd want to help us. She'd want to help Emma and Lily. But she can't make rational decisions anymore, John. You've seen it yourself, the confusion, the forgetfulness. Someone needs to make decisions for her, someone who loves her." I pressed my hand against the wall to steady myself. "What are you suggesting?" Jonathan asked, and I heard the defeat in his voice. "I'm suggesting we protect everyone. Get her properly evaluated, establish power of attorney if necessary. Then we can make sure she's in a safe place, and we can access the home equity to... I stopped listening. I'd heard enough. Back in my room, I sat on the edge of the bed where David and I had whispered our dreams for 40 years, where he'd held my hand through miscarriages and my mother's death and all the small tragedies that make up a life, where he'd told me days before he died, "Nancy, promise me you'll be okay. Promise me you'll fight for yourself if you have to." I'd promised, and now I understood what he'd meant. This wasn't about my health. This was about money. This was about slowly, methodically building a case to declare me incompetent so they could take everything David and I had built. And Claire, smart, calculating Claire, was creating the evidence one manufactured incident at a time. I should have been terrified. I should have broken down, cried, felt betrayed. And part of me did feel all those things. But a larger part, the part that had managed emergency rooms and held dying patients' hands and raised a son alone after David was gone, that part started cataloging facts, analyzing the situation like I'd been trained to do. Claire was creating a paper trail, which meant there was a paper trail I could find. The next morning, after Jonathan left for work and Claire took the girls to school, I went to Jonathan's old office. He rarely used it anymore. Most of his work was on his phone or laptop, but I knew he kept his tablet there, the one he'd gotten 2 Christmases ago and barely touched. I was right. It sat in the desk drawer, covered in dust. When I powered it on, I held my breath. Password protected. I tried Jonathan's birthday. Wrong. David's birthday. Wrong. Then, with a mother's intuition, Emma0316. It opened. The tablet was still synced to Jonathan's iCloud account. His email, his photos, his documents, everything accessible if you knew where to look. And I did. Years of helping Jonathan with computer problems had taught me more than he realized. I started with emails. I filtered by Claire's address and began to read. What I found made my blood run cold. 3 credit cards, opened in my name over the past 6 months. Total debt, $47,000. Every charge, jewelry, designer clothes, spa treatments, made by Claire using cards I'd never seen, at stores I'd never visited. An email chain with someone named Richard Blackwood, attorney at law. Subject line, estate planning consultation. Claire's email. We need to establish incompetency before proceeding with property transfer. What documentation will the court require? Blackwood's response. Medical records showing cognitive decline, documented instances of financial mismanagement, testimony from family members. I can recommend an evaluator who understands the situation. My hands shook as I scrolled further. An email from a real estate agent. Mrs. Wilson, thank you for your inquiry. Based on the property details you provided, I estimate a market value of $1.2 million. I'll come by Tuesday for the assessment as you requested. I'd never contacted any real estate agent, but someone using my email address had. Then I found something that changed everything. A folder labeled Journal, Private. I shouldn't have read it. It was Jonathan's private thoughts, but I opened it anyway because I needed to understand how deep this went. The first entry was dated 3 weeks ago. I don't know what to do anymore. Claire says Mom is declining fast. She showed me the credit card bills, $900 at that jewelry store, $1,500 at some boutique Mom would never shop at. Claire says it's compulsive spending, a sign of cognitive issues. Dr. Mills apparently confirmed Mom should be evaluated. But when I look at Mom, I see the same sharp woman who raised me alone, who worked double shifts to pay for my college, who can still beat me at chess. Am I the one in denial? Claire says I'm too close to see it. She says I'm watching Mom hurt herself and doing nothing. I feel like I'm drowning. Next entry. Lost my project lead position today. The company's cutting costs. My salary's being reduced to almost half. I don't know how to tell Claire. We're already behind on the mortgage. The girls need new shoes, and Emma's braces and Lily's preschool costs more than I thought possible. Claire mentioned Mom's house again tonight. She said if Mom is really declining, we might need to help her access her assets for proper care. She made it sound so reasonable, so loving. Why does it feel wrong? Latest entry from 2 days ago. Something's not right. I caught Claire going through Mom's purse yesterday. When I asked what she was doing, she said she was checking for concerning items. What does that even mean? I found a practice sheet in the garage. Pages of Mom's signature, written over and over in Claire's handwriting. When I confronted her, she said she was learning to recognize the signs of tremor or confusion in Mom's writing. I don't believe her anymore. But if I'm wrong, if Mom really is sick and I'm sabotaging her care because I don't trust my own wife, what kind of son does that make me? I feel like I'm going crazy. Or maybe everyone else is, and I'm the only sane person left. I closed the tablet carefully and sat in the quiet office, Jonathan's words echoing in my mind. He wasn't the villain. He was caught in Claire's web, manipulated and gaslit just like me. My son was another one of Claire's victims. The realization shifted something fundamental in my chest. This wasn't about saving myself anymore. This was about saving Jonathan too, from a marriage built on manipulation, from a woman who would destroy his relationship with his mother for money, from becoming someone he'd hate when he finally understood what he'd been part of. I thought about what David would have done. He'd have fought, yes, but he'd have fought smart. He'd have built his case carefully, protected what mattered, and struck only when victory was certain. I picked up my phone and dialed a number I hadn't used in years. Anderson Legal Services, how may I help you? Margaret Anderson, please. Tell her Nancy Wilson is calling. 3 minutes later, Margaret's warm voice came through the line. Nancy, I've been trying to reach you for months. Your number kept going straight to voicemail. I know. Margaret, I need help, and I need it quietly. Tell me everything, she said, and I heard the shift in her tone, from friend to attorney, sharp and focused. Start from the beginning. I did. Every detail, every incident, every piece of evidence I'd found. When I finished, Margaret was silent for a long moment. Nancy, what you're describing is textbook elder abuse, financial exploitation, emotional manipulation, possible fraud. We need to act fast, but we need to do this right. What do I do? First, you don't tell anyone we've spoken. Second, I'm going to set up a living trust that will protect your assets immediately. They won't be able to sell or mortgage anything without your explicit consent, and I'll be the trustee. Third, we're going to document everything from this point forward. Will that be enough? Margaret's voice went gentle but firm. Nancy, your daughter-in-law is building a case to have you declared incompetent. She's been planning this for months. But here's what she doesn't know. You're the most competent person I've ever met, and I'm about to prove it in ways she'll never see coming. What about Jonathan? Your son is being manipulated. When this is over, he'll understand that. But right now, the best thing you can do for him is protect yourself. Because if Claire succeeds, she won't just take your house. She'll take your dignity, your autonomy, and your relationship with those granddaughters you love. I looked around Jonathan's office, at the photos on the wall, him as a boy, David teaching him to use a level, all of us at Emma's birth. This house held generations of love. Claire wanted to reduce it all to a dollar amount. Tell me what to do, I said. I'm ready to fight. Margaret Anderson's office sat above a bakery on Main Street, the same building where she'd practiced law for 30 years. I climbed the narrow stairs slowly, my shoulder protesting, and found her waiting with a pot of chamomile tea and a stack of legal documents that would change everything. Living trust, she explained, sliding papers across her desk. As of right now, this house and all your assets transfer into a trust. You're the beneficiary, but I'm the trustee. That means nobody, not Jonathan, not Claire, not anyone, can sell, mortgage, or transfer your property without my explicit approval. Can they contest it? They can try. But you're here, of sound mind, making this decision voluntarily. I'll have it witnessed and notarized within the hour. She poured tea into delicate cups. Nancy, there's something else we need to discuss. Recording conversations. My heart sank. I read that's illegal. In some states, yes, but Oregon is a one-party consent state. That means you can record any conversation you're part of. However, she held up a finger. I don't recommend secret recordings. They can backfire legally and emotionally. What I do recommend is being transparent. Put up a small sign in your home. This property may be monitored for security purposes. Then anything recorded is admissible and defensible. Won't that make Claire suspicious? Margaret smiled grimly. Let her be suspicious. Let her know she's being watched. Sometimes the best defense is making your opponent nervous. Within 3 days, Margaret had executed the trust. I'd installed a small security camera in the living room with appropriate signage, and she'd connected me with Michael Foster, a private investigator who looked more like a retired librarian than a detective. I don't do the dramatic stuff, Michael told me at our first meeting, his voice soft and measured. I do patient observation, paper trails, and pattern recognition. Your daughter-in-law has patterns. I'll find them. He did. Within a week, Michael presented his preliminary findings in Margaret's office, spreading photographs across her desk like cards in a game of solitaire. She meets this man every Tuesday and Thursday, he said, pointing to a tall figure in an expensive suit. Richard Blackwood, attorney, specializes in elder law and estate disputes, has a reputation for, let's say, creative interpretations of legal ethics. Margaret leaned forward. I know Blackwood. He's been sanctioned twice by the state bar. There's more. Michael produced bank statements. Mrs. Wilson, your daughter-in-law has been withdrawing large amounts of cash, $5,000 to $10,000 monthly, always from ATMs, always in small increments to avoid reporting requirements. Where's it going? I asked. That's the question. No corresponding deposits in her accounts, no large purchases. The money just disappears. He pulled out another photo. She's also meeting with someone else. I haven't identified him yet, but they meet at coffee shops, parks, always public places, never the same location twice. I stared at Claire's face in the photograph, animated in conversation with a stranger, and felt something shift inside me. This wasn't just about stealing a house. Claire was involved in something deeper, something carefully planned and methodically executed. Michael, Margaret said, I want full surveillance, every meeting, every transaction. And Nancy, she turned to me, we need you evaluated by an independent psychiatrist, someone with impeccable credentials who can testify that you're mentally sound. Claire will know something's wrong if I suddenly start seeing doctors. Not if it's your choice, not if you initiate it. Margaret's eyes held mine. You're a woman concerned about cognitive health after seeing some worrying symptoms in herself. You're being proactive. That's the narrative. Can you do that? I thought about the woman I'd been before David died. Competent, professional, someone who made life or death decisions on hospital floors. That woman was still here. She'd just been quiet for too long. Yes, I said. I can do that. Dr. Patricia Mills had kind eyes and a firm handshake. Her office smelled of lavender and old books, nothing like the clinical sterility I'd expected. Mrs. Wilson, Margaret tells me you requested this evaluation yourself. Why? I told her the truth, or most of it. My concerns about memory, the stress of widowhood, wanting to ensure I was thinking clearly. She listened without judgment, took notes in neat handwriting, and spent 3 hours putting me through cognitive tests that ranged from simple memory games to complex problem-solving scenarios. At the end, she set down her pen and smiled. Mrs. Wilson, you're one of the sharpest 67-year-olds I've evaluated. Your memory, reasoning, and executive function are all well above average for your age group. Whatever's been causing you stress, it's not cognitive decline. You're sure? I'm sure. In fact, I'd like your permission to document these results thoroughly. If you ever need to establish mental competency for any reason, medical decisions, legal matters, you'll have unimpeachable evidence. I signed the release forms with steady hands. That evening, I sat at the kitchen table with Margaret's document checklist. Living trust, executed. Psychiatric evaluation, completed. Paper trail, building. Witness statements, in progress. Barbara and 3 other nursing colleagues had already submitted sworn affidavits attesting to my mental acuity. I was building a fortress, brick by brick, but I was also watching my family disintegrate. Jonathan had started eating dinner in his office. The girls asked why Daddy looked so sad, and Claire had begun watching me with an expression I couldn't quite read. Not anger, something closer to calculation, like a chess player seeing her opponent's strategy and adjusting accordingly. The night everything changed, I was washing dishes when Michael called. I identified the second man, he said without preamble. You're not going to like this. I dried my hands carefully. Tell me. His name is Dr. Raymond Chen, psychiatrist. He's been involved in several high-profile competency cases, lost his license in California for falsifying reports, but he's still practicing in Oregon under, let's say, questionable circumstances. My stomach dropped. She's planning to have me evaluated by a corrupt psychiatrist. That's my assessment. Blackwood and Chen have worked together before. The pattern is always the same. Family member requests evaluation, Chen finds incompetency, court awards guardianship, or power of attorney. That's fraud. Yes, but it's effective fraud. By the time victims realize what's happening, they've lost legal standing to fight back. He paused. Mrs. Wilson, there's something else. I followed your daughter-in-law to a storage facility. Unit 247. I couldn't see inside, but she spent 40 minutes there yesterday, carrying out several boxes. After we hung up, I sat in the dark kitchen, listening to the house settle around me. Somewhere above, Emma and Lily were sleeping. Somewhere down the hall, Jonathan was probably staring at his computer, trapped between loyalty to his mother and fear of losing his wife. And Claire? Claire was in her bathroom, probably planning her next move in this game I hadn't known I was playing. I thought about David's workbench in the garage, about the life we'd built in this house. I thought about Emma's laugh and Lily's small hand in mine. I thought about being declared incompetent, warehoused in some facility while Claire sold everything and disappeared. Then I thought about something else, the stack of old nursing journals in my closet, the ones I'd kept from my 35 years in emergency medicine. I'd learned something in those years that most people never understood. The quietest patients were often fighting the hardest battles. The ones who didn't scream or cry or make a fuss, those were the survivors. They conserved energy, assessed their situation, and struck when the moment was right. I was done being quiet in defeat. It was time to be quiet in strategy. The confrontation happened on a Tuesday afternoon when Jonathan was at work and the girls were at school. I'd watched Claire leave for her weekly meeting with Blackwood, followed her route on Michael's GPS tracker, and when I was certain she was 20 minutes away, I went to her bathroom. The box was exactly where I expected it to be, behind the towels in the cabinet under the sink. Inside were documents, some I recognized, forged medical records with my name, practice sheets of my signature, and some I didn't. A photograph, old and creased. A young Claire, maybe 23, standing beside an older man in front of a beautiful house. They were both smiling. On the back, in faded ink, Dad and me, last summer at the house. Beneath the photo, legal documents, estate records, a court case from 15 years ago, Claire Mitchell versus Catherine Mitchell, estate of Robert Mitchell. I photographed everything with my phone and was replacing the box when I heard the front door open. Claire stood in the bathroom doorway, her face utterly still. You went through my things, she said quietly. Yes, I straightened, meeting her eyes. Just like you went through mine. For a long moment we stared at each other. Then something cracked in Claire's expression. Not anger, but something raw. She sank down onto the edge of the bathtub, and when she spoke, her voice was hollow. You found the photo. I found everything. Your father's estate case. How your stepmother used power of attorney to take everything. How you were left with nothing. I kept my voice gentle. I'm sorry that happened to you, Claire. Truly. She laughed bitterly. Are you? Because you're about to do the same thing to me. Protect your precious house while Jonathan and I lose everything. That's not... Yes, it is. She stood abruptly. You have no idea what it's like. I watched my father's wife, a woman he'd known for 3 years, take 40 years of my family's history. Our house, his business, everything. The court said it was legal, said he'd given her power of attorney, said she had the right. Her hands shook. I was 23. I had to drop out of grad school. I lived in my car for 2 months. And you know what the worst part was? Everyone acted like it was fine, like losing everything my father built was just bad luck. I took a careful step closer. What happened to you was wrong. It was theft, even if it was legal theft. But Claire, don't. She held up a hand. Don't tell me that what happened to me doesn't give me the right to protect my family now. Jonathan is drowning financially. Those girls need stability. And you're sitting on over $1 million while we can barely make the mortgage. So your solution is to do to me what was done to you? Something flickered across her face. Shame, maybe, or recognition. I thought if I had a plan, if I was smarter about it, it would be different. Not theft, just redistribution. You'd be taken care of in a good facility. Jonathan would have breathing room. The girls would be secure. By declaring me incompetent? By opening credit cards in my name? By planning to have me evaluated by a corrupt psychiatrist? Her head snapped up. How do you... I know everything, Claire. The storage unit. Richard Blackwood. Dr. Chen. Every forged document, every manufactured incident, every lie you told my son. I kept my voice steady. I know you're in debt to Blackwood for legal fees you can't pay. I know you're terrified he'll come after you if this doesn't work. That's what I'm in too deep means, isn't it? She stared at me, and I watched her realize that the game had shifted, that the confused old woman she'd been manipulating knew every move on the board. "What are you going to do?" she whispered. I looked at this woman, broken by trauma, driven by fear, destroying everything around her in a desperate attempt to never be powerless again. I saw myself in her, just a little. The terror of losing everything, the lengths you'd go to protect what mattered. But I also saw the difference. She'd decided her trauma justified hurting others. I'd decided mine wouldn't. "I'm going to give you a choice," I said. "You can stop now. Admit to Jonathan what you've done, get real help for your PTSD, and we'll work something out for the financial situation. Or you can keep going, and when this ends, and it will end, Claire, you'll lose everything. Your marriage, your daughters, your freedom." "You're bluffing." "Am I? I have recordings of you in Blackwood. I have the forged signatures. I have evidence of mail fraud, identity theft, and conspiracy to commit elder abuse. Margaret has already filed preliminary reports with the DA's office." It was a slight exaggeration, but not much. "So no, I'm not bluffing." Claire's face had gone white. "Jonathan won't believe you. He thinks you're declining." "Does he? Or does he think something's wrong and he's too afraid to face it?" She didn't answer. We stood in the harsh bathroom light, two women on opposite sides of fear, and I waited for her to make her choice. Finally, she spoke, her voice barely audible. "It's too late. Blackwood won't let me stop. I owe him $30,000 in fees. If I don't deliver, he'll sue. He'll tell Jonathan everything. I'll lose the girls. Then we fight him together. But you have to stop lying. To me, to Jonathan, to yourself." For a moment, just a moment, I thought she might take the exit I was offering. I saw her waver, saw some small part of her that remembered being 23 and powerless, and wanted desperately not to become what had destroyed her. Then her phone buzzed. She glanced at it, and whatever softness had crept into her expression vanished. "I can't," she said. "I'm sorry, Nancy, but I can't." She walked past me, and I heard the bedroom door close with a soft final click. I stood alone in the bathroom, looking at my reflection in the mirror. I'd tried mercy. I'd offered understanding. Now there was only one option left. I had to win. The next morning, I called Margaret. "She's not going to stop." Then we moved to phase 2. "Nancy, are you ready for what comes next? Because once we start, there's no going back. This gets public. This gets ugly." I thought about Emma and Lily, about the kind of grandmother I wanted to be for them. Not the victim, not the cautionary tale, the woman who stood up when it mattered. "I'm ready," I said. "Let's end this." Margaret's strategy was surgical. Within 48 hours, she'd filed a cease and desist letter to Richard Blackwood, notifying him that any further contact with Claire regarding my estate would be considered harassment and conspiracy to commit fraud. Michael delivered copies of our evidence to the district attorney's office, not to press charges yet, but to establish a record. "We're boxing them in," Margaret explained over coffee in her office. "Every move they make now is documented. Every lie creates more evidence." But Claire didn't retreat. She escalated. The call came on a Thursday morning. Grace Porter from Child Protective Services, her voice professionally neutral. "Mrs. Wilson, I need to schedule a home visit. We've received a report of concern regarding your grandchildren's welfare." My blood went cold. "What kind of concern?" "I can't discuss the details over the phone. Would tomorrow at 10 work for you?" After we hung up, I called Margaret immediately. "CPS is coming. Claire must have reported me." "Damn it," I heard papers rustling. "Okay, this is actually good. It means she's panicking, making desperate moves. But Nancy, we need to prepare. They'll inspect the house, interview you, possibly talk to the girls. You need to be calm, cooperative, and have your documentation ready." That evening, I cleaned the house with the kind of focus I'd once reserved for pre-surgical prep. Every surface wiped, every corner inspected. I laid out Dr. Mill's psychiatric evaluation, my medical records, character references from former colleagues. Jonathan came home late, avoiding my eyes. Claire had clearly told him something. a twisted version where I was the problem, where calling CPS was an act of love, not warfare. "Mom," he said, standing in the kitchen doorway, "we need to talk about your health." "My health is fine, Jonathan. Better than fine. I have documentation. Claire's worried about the girls. She says you've been unstable." The word hung between us like a weapon. "Unstable," I repeated. "Is that what she told you?" He looked miserable. "She showed me things. Medical bills, strange purchases, emails you don't remember sending." "Mom, I want to believe you, but you believe her instead." "I don't know what to believe anymore." His voice cracked. "My wife says one thing, my mother says another, and I'm stuck in the middle watching everything fall apart. The company's laying off another 20% next month. We're 3 payments behind on the mortgage. I can't sleep, I can't think. And now CPS is involved because nobody can agree on whether you're okay or not." I looked at my son, my boy who'd once brought me dandelions and called them flowers, who'd sobbed in my arms when his father died, who was now being pulled apart by forces he didn't understand. "Jonathan, come with me." I led him to his old office and opened the laptop, pulled up the files I'd saved. "Read these, all of them. Then you decide what to believe." He stared at the screen, confused, then clicked on the first document. I watched his face change as he read, confusion to shock to horror to something that looked like grief. "Oh my God," he whispered. "The credit cards, the forged signatures, Chen's psychiatric reports." He looked up at me, eyes red. "How long have you known?" "Long enough. Margaret's been helping me build a case." "A case? Mom, you're talking about—" "Claire's my wife, the mother of my children, and she's been systematically planning to steal this house and have me declared incompetent. She's manipulating you, Jonathan, using your financial stress, your fear of losing everything to turn you against me." He stood abruptly, pacing. "I can't. This doesn't make sense. Why would she—" "Because of what happened to her. Her father's estate, how she lost everything to his second wife." I kept my voice gentle. "She's traumatized, Jonathan, and she's decided that trauma justifies hurting others." He sank into the chair, head in his hands. "What do I do?" "Tomorrow, when CPS comes, you tell the truth. Whatever Claire told them, you correct it. You show them you're not complicit." "She'll leave me. Take the girls." "Maybe, but if you stay silent now, you become part of the abuse. Is that the man your father raised you to be?" Grace Porter arrived exactly at 10, a woman in her 40s with tired eyes and a clipboard. She walked through the house slowly, taking notes, while I followed with my folder of documentation. In the living room, she paused at the security camera. "You have monitoring equipment?" "Yes, with proper signage, for safety purposes." Her eyebrow raised slightly. "And who suggested you install this?" "My attorney, after several incidents of gaslighting and financial fraud." "I see." She made a note. "Mrs. Wilson, the report we received stated that you've been experiencing severe cognitive decline, that you've made threats toward your grandchildren, and that you're unable to care for yourself properly." "May I show you something?" I handed her Dr. Mill's evaluation. She read it carefully, then looked up. "This is dated last week. I had myself evaluated by an independent psychiatrist because I was concerned about the accusations being made against me. As you can see, I'm cognitively sound. Why would someone report otherwise?" "Because my daughter-in-law is attempting to establish grounds for power of attorney so she can sell this house." I gave her the folder. "This contains evidence of identity theft, forged documents, and conspiracy to commit elder abuse. My attorney has already filed reports with the DA's office." Grace Porter spent the next hour reviewing documents, her expression growing increasingly grave. When Jonathan arrived home early from work, I'd texted him to come. She interviewed him separately. I couldn't hear what was said, but when they emerged, Jonathan looked ill and Grace looked angry. "Mrs. Wilson," she said carefully, "based on what I've seen today, I have significant concerns, but not about you. I need to speak with Claire Wilson as soon as possible." Claire arrived 20 minutes later, all concerned smiles until she saw Grace's expression. "Mrs. Wilson," Grace said, "you filed a report claiming your mother-in-law was a danger to your children. I've reviewed extensive evidence suggesting that report was false and potentially retaliatory. I'm also concerned about the emotional manipulation of your spouse and the exploitation of an elder. This investigation will continue, but the focus has shifted." I watched the color drain from Claire's face. You don't understand. I understand that you've potentially filed a false CPS report, which is a crime. I also understand that your children may be living in a household where one parent is committing fraud against a family member. She handed Claire a card. You need to contact this number within 24 hours. If you don't, I'll be filing my own report with law enforcement. After Grace left, the house was silent. Claire stood frozen in the entryway. Jonathan sat on the stairs, head bowed. "Jonathan," Claire finally said, "I can explain." "Don't." His voice was hollow. "Nancy showed me everything. The real estate agent, Blackwood, Chen, the credit cards. Everything. I was trying to protect us. You were trying to steal from my mother." He looked up, and I'd never seen my son's face so hard. "You made me doubt her sanity. You made me complicit in elder abuse. You used our daughters as weapons. Because you were too weak to do what needed to be done. Your mother is sitting on a fortune while we're drowning. That's her house, her life, and you decided you had more right to it than she did." He stood, shaking. "Get out. Jonathan, get out of this house now." She looked at me then, and I saw the moment she realized she'd lost. Not just the house, not just the money, but everything. Her mask of concerned daughter-in-law crumbled, revealing something desperate and broken underneath. "You won," she said to me, voice bitter. "Congratulations. This wasn't about winning, Claire. This was about stopping you before you destroyed us all." She grabbed her purse and walked out. The door closed with a soft click that echoed through the house like thunder. Margaret filed the petition for a permanent restraining order 3 days later. Claire, through Blackwood, countered with an emergency competency evaluation, asking the court to appoint Chen as the evaluator. The hearing was scheduled for 2 weeks before Christmas. The courtroom was smaller than I'd imagined, fluorescent lit and impersonal. Margaret sat beside me, calm and prepared. Across the aisle, Claire and Richard Blackwood whispered urgently. Jonathan sat in the gallery behind me, having agreed to testify. Judge Patricia Brennan, a woman in her 60s with steel-gray hair, reviewed the preliminary documents with sharp eyes. "This is highly unusual," she said. "We have dueling claims of incompetency and abuse. Mr. Blackwood, your client is requesting immediate evaluation and emergency guardianship?" Blackwood stood. "Yes, Your Honor. Mrs. Nancy Wilson has shown clear signs of cognitive decline. Her own son can attest to incidents of confusion, memory loss, and financial mismanagement. We believe she's a danger to herself and requires immediate intervention." "And yet," Judge Brennan said, "I have a psychiatric evaluation here from Dr. Patricia Mills stating the exact opposite. That evaluation was procured by the subject herself, Your Honor. Its objectivity is questionable. We request that Dr. Raymond Chen, a neutral evaluator, conduct a proper assessment." Margaret rose. "Your Honor, Dr. Chen is hardly neutral. He's been involved in several cases with Mr. Blackwood, and he lost his license in California for falsifying competency reports." Blackwood's face reddened. "That's a baseless accusation. It's documented fact." Margaret produced a file. "California Medical Board, case number 2019-4782. Dr. Chen was found to have altered evaluation results in exchange for legal fees. I have the board's decision right here." The judge took the document, read it silently. When she looked up, her expression was ice. "Mr. Blackwood, you recommended an evaluator with a history of fraud?" "He was cleared of the most serious charges. He lost his license. That's not cleared." She turned to Margaret. "Ms. Anderson, what's your position?" "Your Honor, my client has been the victim of systematic financial fraud and emotional abuse perpetrated by her daughter-in-law. We have evidence of identity theft, forged documents, and conspiracy to obtain power of attorney through fraudulent means. Rather than needing guardianship, Mrs. Wilson needs protection from those who would exploit her." "Strong accusations. Can you support them?" "We can, beginning with testimony from Jonathan Wilson, the defendant's husband." Jonathan took the stand, his hands trembling. Under Margaret's gentle questioning, he explained everything: Claire's manipulation, the forged signatures, the meetings with Blackwood, his own participation in monitoring his mother based on lies. "Mr. Wilson," Margaret asked, "in your honest assessment, Does your mother suffer from cognitive decline? No, his voice broke. My mother is one of the sharpest people I know. I was manipulated into doubting her. I'm ashamed that I believed the lies. Blackwood's cross-examination was brutal, but Jonathan held firm. When he stepped down, Claire was pale and shaking. Then Margaret called her surprise witness. Your Honor, I'd like to call Dr. Patricia Mills. Dr. Mills took the stand with calm authority. After establishing her credentials, 30 years in psychiatry, former head of geriatric mental health at Oregon Health Sciences University, Margaret asked, Dr. Mills, you evaluated Nancy Wilson. What were your findings? Mrs. Wilson exhibits no signs of cognitive impairment. Her memory, reasoning, and executive function are all excellent for her age. Thank you. Now, Dr. Mills, is there anything else the court should know? Dr. Mills paused, then spoke carefully. Yes, Claire Wilson was my patient 8 years ago. The courtroom went silent. She came to me following a traumatic experience with her father's estate. She was diagnosed with complex PTSD, anxiety disorder, and what I noted at the time as obsessive preoccupation with financial security and pathological distrust of family structures. Did she complete treatment? No. She attended 3 sessions, then stopped. In my final notes, I wrote that I was concerned about her potential for harmful behaviors if the underlying trauma wasn't addressed. Blackwood shot to his feet. Objection! This is a violation of doctor-patient privilege. I received written authorization from Mrs. Claire Wilson herself, Doctor, Mills said calmly, producing a document. She signed a blanket release of all medical records when she filed her petition. She authorized the court to access any relevant health information. Margaret smiled slightly. Claire had signed the release thinking it would only expose Nancy's supposed medical issues. She'd never considered her own records might surface. Judge Brennan studied the document, then looked at Claire. Mrs. Wilson, did you receive treatment for PTSD related to financial trauma? Claire's lawyer whispered urgently, but she shook her head. That was years ago. It's highly relevant, the judge interrupted. It suggests a pattern of behavior rooted in past trauma, combined with the evidence of forged documents, fraudulent medical claims, and witness testimony. She paused. I'm denying the petition for competency evaluation. Furthermore, I'm granting the restraining order. Claire Wilson, you are not to contact Nancy Wilson or access any shared financial accounts. I'm also ordering a criminal investigation into possible elder abuse and fraud. Claire made a sound like something breaking. This hearing is adjourned. All parties will be notified when the DA's office completes its investigation. As we left the courtroom, I heard Claire sobbing. Blackwood was already distancing himself, packing his briefcase with quick, angry movements. Jonathan walked beside me, silent. Outside, in the December cold, he finally spoke. What happens now? Now we heal, I said. All of us. 3 weeks later, snow was falling softly outside my kitchen window as I rolled out pie dough. The same counter, the same rhythm, but everything different. Jonathan and the girls were coming for Christmas Eve dinner. Claire wasn't. She was staying with her parents in Seattle, awaiting trial. The DA had offered us a plea deal. 2 years minimum security, 3 years probation, mandatory therapy, full restitution. She hadn't decided yet. The doorbell rang. Emma and Lily burst through, snow-covered and laughing, wrapping themselves around my legs. Grandma, can we decorate cookies? After dinner, sweethearts. Jonathan came in last, looking exhausted but lighter somehow. We'd talked every day since the hearing, real conversations, not the careful edited ones from before. He was seeing a therapist, working through the guilt and manipulation. Mom, he said quietly, I'll never be able to apologize enough. You were a victim too, Jonathan. We heal together. During dinner, my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I almost ignored it, but something made me answer. Nancy? Claire's voice, small and broken. Please don't hang up. I walked into the hallway away from the dining room. I'm listening. I'm taking the plea deal. My lawyer says it's the best option. A long pause. But that's not why I called. I need to say, I'm sorry. Really, truly sorry. I've been in therapy every day since the hearing. Real therapy this time. And I'm starting to understand what I became. What you became started with what was done to you. Yes. But I made choices. I hurt you. I hurt Jonathan. I hurt my own daughters by using them as weapons." Her voice wavered. "My therapist says I was trying to rewrite my father's story, be the powerful one this time, instead of the powerless daughter. But all I did was become my stepmother." I leaned against the wall, feeling the weight of her words. "Claire, healing is possible, but it requires honesty, with yourself, with everyone you hurt." "I know. Nancy, why did you help me? You asked the DA for leniency. You could have buried me." "Because someone needs to break the cycle of pain. Because Emma and Lily need a mother who's healed, not destroyed. Because despite everything, I believe people can change." She was crying now. "I don't deserve that kindness." "Maybe not, but you need it anyway. We all do sometimes." After we hung up, I stood in the quiet hallway, thinking about mercy and justice, and how they weren't opposites but partners in the long, difficult work of healing. I returned to the dining room where Jonathan was teaching Lily how to fold napkins, and Emma was telling a story that involved dragons and ice cream. My family. Damaged but intact. Healing. Margaret called that evening, her voice warm. "Merry early Christmas, Nancy. I wanted you to know the living trust is unassailable. The house is protected. You're protected. You can rest now. Thank you, Margaret, for everything." After everyone left and the house was quiet, I walked through the rooms David had built, touching the walls that held 40 years of memories. I thought about silence, how people mistook it for weakness, never understanding that sometimes silence was the strongest choice of all. I'd been silent when I needed to watch, silent when I gathered evidence, silent when I let Claire think she'd won, right until the moment I proved she hadn't. They'd mistaken my silence for defeat, but silence was when I was most dangerous. In the morning, Emma and Lily would return to open presents. Jonathan would laugh again, really laugh, maybe for the first time in months. And I would be here in the house David built, the house I'd fought for, the house that would someday belong to my grandchildren. Not because I'd screamed or begged or fought dirty, because I'd been patient, strategic, silent. Because sometimes the quietest people are the ones who win.